This video will contain spoilers for Nightreign's first boss and only Nightreign's first boss. No footage will be shown after the defeat of the first boss. I myself have only barely made it past the first boss, so I may delist this video if another 20 hours of gameplay disproves my entire thesis. Still, I thought it was worth sharing. If nothing else, this video is me logging my thoughts to myself about Nightreign 2 days in. When I first fought Gladius, Beast of Night, the background of the arena reminded me of something. At first, I thought it was an enormous eye, and I'm still not entirely opposed to that idea, though it has become less convincing to me. Instead, I noticed that the lines that swoop over what appears to be a star are arrayed in a way that is suggestive of a black hole or a neutron star's accretion disk. An accretion disk is a collection of gas and other materials that orbits around some cosmic object. This body that the accretion disk orbits around often has such an enormous gravitational pull that light itself bends around it. For this reason, they are hard to portray in an image. Accretion disks are actually usually flat, and the accretion disk in this image is in fact flat as well. It looks weird because, again, the black hole has such a strong gravitational field that it is warping the light around it. I'm simplifying dramatically, of course, and if you're interested, Veritasium has an excellent video going over why exactly black holes look like this. Of course, there is no black hole in the sky in Gladius' arena. That's a star, I think. But black holes aren't the only cosmic bodies that can produce an effect like this. Neutron stars can, as can white dwarfs, though not as strong. White dwarfs and neutron stars are both stars that remain after a massive star goes supernova. All that is left is the extraordinarily dense core. The resulting object isn't quite dense enough to be a black hole that rips through space and time, but it is still extraordinarily dense. Dense enough, at least, to warp light. Now, I'm not 100% convinced that what we are looking at is a neutron star or white dwarf. For one, the color isn't quite right. I'd expect a pale blue rather than a dusky red. Still, I'm struggling to understand the quote-unquote rings around the star as anything other than an accretion disk warped by gravity. To my eye, it just looks far too similar to be anything else. Like I said, we may be meant to read the star as a giant eye hanging in the sky, but the lines are just shaped correctly enough to resemble that accretion disk. So, what does it mean? I don't know. Once I came to the conclusion that that was an enormously dense celestial object in the distance that was bending light around it, fighting in that arena felt many times more unsettling. I think part of what makes it spooky to me is how inscrutable a decision it is. Why did FromSoft elect to add a possible neutron star to the first Night Lord's arena? What story does that tell? What themes does that evoke? The conclusion I am most worried about, and the conclusion that I think is most likely, is that the inscrutability is the point. Consider neutron stars and other weird cosmic phenomena that bend light. I think they are eldritch in the Lovecraftian meaning of the word, which is to say that we cannot understand them even as we observe them. We can look directly at them and still not quite comprehend them. The idea that something can be so heavy as to warp light itself as an abstraction makes some amount of sense. But they are not abstractions. I can just show you an image of a black hole that warps light around it from our heroes at the European Southern Observatory. That is really out there. It's a real physical thing that exists. Its realness is unnerving to me because it shows how little we still understand about the nature of our universe. FromSoft is adding a real cosmic phenomenon that many struggle to understand into a game series with a world that, similarly, many often have a hard time understanding. The epistemological instability, or the metaphorical ground moving beneath us that troubles our every attempt to rationally understand it, is, I think, part of the point. Let me try and say this another way. I instinctually want the idea of a neutron star or a black hole or other weird cosmic phenomena to make sense. After all, humans as a species are surprisingly good at making things make sense. We tell ourselves stories about the moon and various other celestial objects to mold them into something our imagination can comprehend. When ancient peoples looked up and saw the sun, they understood it not as a giant ball of explosions, but as a god that resembled them. Not only are neutron stars, and by extension black holes, tough to fit into our collective imagination, but their very existence also demonstrates that there are fundamental truths about the universe that we don't understand. For example, we don't really know what is at the core of a neutron star. It may be some state of matter that we do not currently have a name for. These cosmic phenomena, which I again stress are real things that are happening in our universe, take our laws of physics to such extremes that the rules of the universe stop making intuitive sense. I'm ranting a bit, but my argument here is just that there are cosmic phenomena that are so weird that it's tough to understand them. They are, by their nature, inscrutable. I think it's possible that this is the thesis that underpins both Elden Ring and Elden Ring Nightreign. The inscrutability is the point. The world of both games doesn't always make rational sense. The games present us with situations and icons and lore that our brains struggle to interpret into something cohesive. So, I think the theme that the neutron star introduces here is one of unknowability, a necessary lack of knowledge. Okay, I feel comfortable standing behind all the arguments I just made. Now, let's enter the speculation zone. Mostly what we do here in the speculation zone is speculate, so here's some speculation. There are some interesting conclusions you can arrive at if you start by understanding that we're looking at a white dwarf or some other immensely heavy cosmic body. I should say that I don't know if the developers intended any of it, and frankly, I think authorial intent is sort of beside the point. FromSoft has given us the game, and it's ours to do with as we wish. That's not necessarily a popular method of criticism in the broader community, but still I believe trying to deduce exact authorial intent is a doomed prospect. And in the end, not all that interesting to me, though I have no issue with others who like to experience the game that way. I'm currently writing another video defending that position in more detail. With that caveat out of the way, here's what I think. The presence of a neutron star necessitates the earlier presence of a massive star that exploded in a supernova. Neutron stars form after massive stars exhaust their nuclear fuel, and the immense gravity of the star's core causes the stars to collapse in on themselves. So, what we are seeing here may be the remnants of an enormous sun. The presence of such a celestial body would slide several truths about the lands between into place, I think. First, it makes the sun realm more comprehensible. In this theoretical world, a massive sun dominates the sky and the lands between. Historically, the sun is commonly worshipped as a religious icon or symbol. Even today, it's common for Christians to present sunlight shining through clouds as a way to depict God. They're called God rays for a reason. The implicit and uncontested assumption there is that the sun symbolically is God, and on days when you walk outside and see a beautiful array of enormous clouds with sunlight beaming through them, it's easy to understand why. The sky and the cosmos beyond happens on a scale so much bigger than us. So big, in fact, that it's really a difference of kind, not scale. In other words, we can't understand the sun as a soccer ball that's just a million times bigger. Its bigness is intrinsic to its very being. It is so big that we cannot understand it for what it is, and thus attach other fundamentally unknowable concepts to it, such as that of God. That's a long-winded way of saying that in this version of the lands between, where a massive sun dominates the sky, all the real-world evidence we have strongly suggests that the people of that world would worship that sun as a religious symbol, or even form a theocracy around it. Here we could understand how the Erdtree religion is subversive. After all, the Erdtree would have taken that sun's place after its collapse. Of course, time is weird in the lands between, and the timeline here doesn't quite add up. But, you know where else time is weird? A neutron star. When the immense gravity of a neutron star bends light, it is also bending time, in a manner of speaking. After all, the closer you travel to the speed of light, the more time slows down around you. Kind of. Now, there's a glaring hole in this theory that I don't really know what to do with, which is that a supernova would obliterate whatever planet the lands between is on. And of course it would. I don't have a great response to that critique. It may be possible for a planet to survive a supernova, Some of the first exoplanets ever discovered were rotating around neutron stars, which suggests they survived the earlier supernova. Maybe the arena in which we fight the Night Lord is just a fully separate place in either space or time, or both, from anywhere we've been before. After all, we don't see any moon in the sky. And it's not inconceivable that we are able to teleport from celestial body to celestial body. The moon behind Renala looks much bigger than it does everywhere else in the lands between, which suggests to me that we fight her on the surface of the dark moon. The other thing I'll mention is that my gut is strongly leading me to believe that this neutron star, or whatever it is, gives us a giant hint at the nature of the greater will. I just don't know how to put the pieces together. The only confirmation we have of the greater will being quote-unquote real is the description of the Staff of the Great Beyond, which notes that the Mother received signs from the greater will from the beyond of the microcosm. The beyond of the microcosm sounds a lot like the greater will is on the other side of a black hole to my ear, especially because the staff itself resembles one. Perhaps in the regular Elden Ring timeline, a collapsing star formed a black hole through which certain signs came from some greater and incomprehensible presence on the other end. And perhaps in the Nightreign timeline, a collapsing star formed a white dwarf, or a neutron star, that was so much smaller on a relative scale that the night became longer and more deadly. Am I being overly literal here? Almost certainly. If I try to understand both Elden Ring and Nightreign in completely literal terms, I will collapse under the weight of their contradictions. Regardless, I think this is an interesting point of information that I haven't seen anyone talk about, so I wanted to throw it out there. Maybe I've missed something crucial. Maybe my very next Nightreign run will prove all of this entirely wrong. The thing that will always sit with me, though, is the uneasiness I feel in Gladius's arena, so close to something so incomprehensible to my tiny mind, and which looks, unnervingly, too much like an eye.